Committee Member Bradley. Kaufman Gray.
Here.
France.
Here.
Horn.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Tabor.
Here.
Chair Blackerby.
Here. And I just want to start by welcoming and introducing our new committee member, Kathleen Rodriguez. We're excited to have her here, and just glad to have you, and welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much.
And we'll make sure the public takes it easy on you for at least tonight. So, be nice. No changes to the agenda. I don't have any speaker slips for public comment on items not on the agenda. Anyone? No? All right. If you would like to speak on a different item, there are speaker slips over there. You can either bring them to Kim or on this side, and they'll pass it up to me. Let's see. Consent calendar is approval of minutes from the May 24th meeting. Were there any changes to those minutes?
I move to accept.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm guessing one abstention. One abstention from Ms. Rodriguez. All right. Moving right along, item number 3 is the review of the May MTD monthly report. I don't know if I don't see anyone here from MTD, but perhaps Mr. Allen has some background.
This is an informational item for the committee. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We plan on having at our next meeting, we'll have MTD at the meeting to give the annual report.
Great. Yeah, Mr. Kaufman-Gray?
Just for the public to know, since we have it in front of us and they don't have it in front of us, but it was a nice increase on ridership for the downtown shuttle and waterfront shuttle from 44,456 2011 in May. It's now up to 45,742, which is a 2.9% increase for the month. So I just want the public to know that ridership has been increasing on the waterfront shuttle.
So keep it up. Any other comments about the MTD report? All right. Item number 4, consideration for the removal of west side bicycle lanes on Mission, Gillespie, Robbins, and Valerio streets on the west side.
Excuse me, Chair Blackerby.
Yes?
I'm the Executive Director of the Santa Barbara Bike Coalition, and we've taken an official stance on this issue, so I'm going to recuse myself from this item.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And we've got Mr. Bailey, Transportation Engineer, here to give us a report.
Good evening. My name is Derek Bailey. I'm with the city's Traffic Engineering Group. And we're here tonight to discuss the west side bike lanes. This is a joint project between the Traffic Engineering Group and the Transportation Planning Group in the city. Just some background on these bike lanes. They were installed sometime during the 1970s. Our records aren't real clear as to when exactly they were installed or why they were installed. But basically, they're part-time bike lanes. They wind through the neighborhood. It's growing a mind of its own. It winds its way through the neighborhood towards Lacoumer Junior High School from 7:30 to 9 a.m. and away from Lacoumer Junior High from 2 to 4 p.m. And what I mean by part-time bike lanes are that during those times of the day, 7:30 to 9 a.m. going towards the junior high school, there is no parking on the westbound direction of these bike lanes. And during the rest of the day, there is parking. And again, coming away from the school from 2 to 4 p.m., there's no parking. And during the rest of the day, there is parking. This map just shows the route that the west side bike lanes take. Starts on Valerio Street, adjacent to Harding Elementary, and then goes along Robbins to Mission Street, and then turns westbound again down Gillespie, ending at Lacoumer Junior High School. Earlier this year, we received a number of complaints, comments from residents that live along this bike route. And they all had the same comment. It was, we have to move our cars several times a day because of the parking restrictions, and we're not seeing anybody using these bike lanes. And, our initial response was, it's a bike lane that's there for the junior high school kids to ride to school in the morning and then away from the school in the afternoon. But we decided to take a closer look at it and do some counts. And in the last week in February and early March, we actually did some counts. So this is a picture just showing the current on-street conditions. The last week in February and early March, we did some counts to quantify how well these bike lanes are being used. And what we did is we stationed 3 people along the bike route just to kind of do screen line counts just to see how many students are using those bike lanes. This picture just shows the conditions on the street as it is. You can see the no parking sign there. This is in the eastbound direction, so that shows the no parking going away from the school from 2 to 4 p.m. It is worth noting that a couple years ago these streets were slurry sealed, and for whatever reason the striping didn't go back in. So what should actually be there is a thick white line about 6 feet away from the curb delineating a bike lane. So one reason that the numbers we have may be low is lack of proper striping on these streets. This slide just shows how many people we counted using the bike lanes during the AM peak. The bottom right-hand side of the screen shows adjacent to Harding Elementary. What's happening? Thank you. So adjacent to Harding, we had 1 school-aged person and 4 non-school-aged people riding in that block. Along Robin Street, we didn't observe any people at all using the bike lanes between 7:30 and 9. And we counted over 2 days just to make sure it wasn't an anomaly for one day. On Mission Street, we observed 1 school-aged person and 2 non-school-aged people. And once we got to the corner of Gillespie, we saw 5 kids coming across Mission Street from the east side of Gillespie. And by the time we got to Lacoumer Junior High School, there were 10 school-aged children. So another 5 got picked up along that block. We did notice that some kids were riding in the street, some were on the sidewalk, so it wasn't really consistent as to where exactly they were riding. The numbers in the brackets just show the daily traffic volumes on those streets. So about 2,300 a day on Robbins, 3,800 on Mission, and 1,600 a day on Gillespie. During the PM peak, we saw 11 kids come out of Lacoumer Junior High School, ride down Gillespie. 8 of them continued on Gillespie once they got to Mission, and only 1 turned the corner. And again, we didn't observe any students or non-students riding their bikes on Robbins at all. And again, adjacent to Harding Elementary, we didn't observe any students and 1 non-school-age person. So there's a number of alternatives available to us. One is remove the parking prohibition and the bike lane signs. And that would essentially mean that residents would be free to park in front of their houses without having to move their cars for the time of day parking restrictions. It would also mean there wouldn't be as much space available for those that do ride on the street. So something to consider. Another option is repaint the bike lanes and continue to operate them as park-time bike lanes. Third option is to take no action at this time. We can give Coast and the schools a year to try to improve usage, and we could revisit, go do the same type of study next year to see if there's any change in usage. And another option is to repaint Gillespie only. We did notice that there were more students using that particular block than any of the others. Those are the 4 options. We really struggled with this because generally speaking, we want to promote bike usage and alternative modes of transportation, and this seems to go against that. But given the utilization of those bike lanes, we had a really hard time justifying and making a recommendation not to remove them, and essentially say to residents along that street, you know, even though you have nobody using those bike lanes in front of the street, we recommend that they stay. So we did struggle with this, but in the end, we are recommending that we remove the parking prohibition and the bike lane signs. They're low-volume neighborhood streets. Generally speaking, if we were to consider something, a brand-new installation today, we wouldn't consider these streets just because they are such low-volume streets. There was low utilization by bike riders. The inconvenience of the parking prohibitions to adjacent residents. We talked to the junior high school and Santa Barbara Academy, which are the destinations of the bike lanes, and both of them were okay with removing these bike lanes. And actually the principal from Lacoumbra Junior High School, she actually mentioned that she understood the frustration that residents had with parking conditions in their neighborhoods, because she has to attend some evening meetings with parents in that neighborhoods, and she experienced the parking challenges firsthand. So she just wanted to relay that she understands their frustration. And as well, this isn't part of a connected bike network. So these are all considerations. That's our recommendation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we can take just clarifying questions from committee. If you want to wait, we can go to public comment, or if there are just any pressing questions. Yeah, Mr. Kaufman-Gray.
A couple of questions. What is Lacoumbra, and I know there's the Santa Barbara Academy is there now, but Santa Barbara Academy is more of a drive-to type school versus Lacoumbra, which is a neighborhood junior high. What is their program to let students know when they come to Lacoumbra that there is these bike ways for them to go to and from school? Is there a pamphlet that they give out to students?
I know Coast works with the junior high school, and I'm not exactly sure what Coast's
I mean, because to me,
program
you know,
is.
if they're not told that there is this way to get, an easier way to get to and from school, how would they know to ride their bike on that street?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what is given out to them. You know, we have a suggested route to school program for all those schools. We have a map that shows how they get to schools. I know Coast is our safe route to school coordinator. They handle that program for us. We can ask them if they're here. You can ask them that question of, you know, what they have done in that area.
Okay. And a second question is, okay, I've lived in the area for 20 years. I'm like Upper West Side, Valerio Canyon. All the time I've driven down Robbins, I thought it was for school children to get to Harding School. And I always thought to myself, why are they on the wrong side of the street in the morning? Because to me, you have an elementary school there. That is the time when children first learn how to ride bikes, and that's when you want to encourage them to, you know, learn how to ride bikes. And to me, that was a great way to get. But, you know, it's all about Lacoumbra Junior High, and there's an elementary school right there, and you know, I assumed it was for, you know, Harding School. So, you know, to me, I think Harding School should be part of this program as far as using the streets to encourage students to come to school. I mean, I thought we were supposed to encourage people to walk and ride their bike, and that's whole part of safe routes to school. And to me, we'll have to find out if what Lacoumbra is doing, but I'd like to also know if Harding is encouraging their students to ride their bikes to school. That's kind of a question I guess you cannot answer, but do you know anything about Harding School, if they have a Safe Routes to School program for them?
They do have a program. I'm just not sure of the details of it. Again, we can ask Coast, you know, those kind of questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Wu?
I have a little bit of input on that. I've worked with Lacoumbra Junior High for about 6 years doing Safe Routes to School, coordinating with the leadership class, and a survey of the students that week about how they get to school, what's dangerous, that kind of thing. And there might be someone here from Coast that can speak more to the point, but what I know of that they're doing right now, there's nothing ever that I've ever seen in the packet. I always look through the packet that the parents get at the beginning of the year, nothing on biking. And But Coast has had a walk and roll program for the last 2 years there. And let's see, walk and roll, and it's like for Wednesdays or 1 day a week, and then they try to expand it to more days. And there's been a bike mechanics class there, and various things are going on about encouraging biking or learning how to bike safely on field trips and how to fix your own bike and that kind of thing. So there are more bikes, I noticed, in the bike racks in the last 2 years than there have been before, but there's still only, maybe 20 at the most. And so there is something going on, but it's not, I haven't seen it encouraging people to bike to school every day from the school.
Any other clarifying questions? I just have one, which is street sweeping. Would it still continue? Does it happen on a set day now?
It does happen on a set day, and it will continue. There won't be any changes to the street sweeping program.
And when is it? You don't
can't
know
remember.
every street sweeping schedule for every
Afraid
street
not.
in the city, Browning? Unbelievable. All right.
I want to
Is it
say
once
it's
a week?
Thursday morning.
Or once a month?
Probably once a week.
It's one of those days.
It's
It's a guess.
one day, Monday through.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, got it. If anyone from the neighborhood knows, let us know. Wednesday morning, one direction, Thursday in the other.
Is it the same time as the bike closure? I mean, I hope it's the same time. If it's a Wednesday morning, I
think-
hope it's on the same side as,
I think it's between 7 and 9.
okay. No, that's
Right.
right. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so public comment, and then we'll go to the committee. So I have 3 slips, Caitlin Carlson to be followed by Kent Epperson, and then Eric Wright. Yes, please. If you want to submit a slip, they're over here, and you can just pass them up to Mr. Tabor. Ms. Carlson,
Hello.
go ahead.
Is it working? Can you hear
Is
me?
the light bright?
It's green.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good evening. My name is Caitlin Carlson, and I'm the project director for Coast. I can speak briefly on what we've been doing at La Cumbre Junior High. We do have a walk and roll challenge that we work with in conjunction with Traffic Solutions, and it's a weekly survey that we take in conjunction with encouraging kids to walk and bike to school. Walking has been more successful than biking, but we have seen an increase in sort of the overall trend of biking at La Cumbre Junior High. I hope you've been able to read a letter that I sent to the TCC earlier on behalf of Coast and the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition, urging the TCC not to take city staff's recommendation to remove bike lanes in the west side. Mr. Bailey touched on it briefly, but I think it's worth expanding on more, that maybe the reason why the bicycle counts were not high and not being utilized by students is that there is little indication that there is a bike lane there at all. Engineering is one of the most important components to safe and effective alternative transportation. There doesn't seem to be any of that there. The lane was not painted after the slurry seal, and there's a few faded 1-inch square bike route signs. This does not provide much encouragement for younger kids who would like to ride their bikes to school. Both Coast Safe Routes to School program and the Bike Coalition have been working very hard to encourage kids to ride their bikes to school, and removing bike lanes would be the opposite message of that. Deciding to remove the bike lanes for the first time in 35 years does not seem to be in line with how the city typically does things, and I don't feel that removing this concept of the part-time bike lane would be the solution to the street's parking issue. Westside residents are understandably frustrated because they have to move their cars because of the street sweeping schedule and the ban on parking during school's peak hours. The existing no parking schedule seems a bit outdated as well when you take into account the varying schedules that La Cumbre and the Santa Barbara Academy has with summer vacation and after-school programming and things like that. However, it is also possible to somehow schedule, and Mr. Kaufman-Gray touched on this earlier, if we could combine the street sweeping along with the ban on parking, that would be more effective and people wouldn't have to move their cars as much. Removing bike lanes entirely is not the right solution here. Coast and the Bike Coalition cannot promote safe bicycle use if the conditions for biking are not safe. Rather, a poorly performing bike route needs to be thought out with the bicycle network improvements and, more importantly, include in the bicycle master plan. Thank you very much.
Epperson, to be followed by Eric Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kent Epperson. I'm the Director of Traffic Solutions over at SB CAG. Over the last 10 years since I've been at Traffic Solutions, we've kind of been in support of various COAST programs, by coalition programs, and I've just seen a tremendous uptick in just overall program development, particularly since Measure A was approved, and now we've actually finally starting to see the money starting to flow, and we're seeing the development of these new programs. It seems interesting to me that that as we're seeing this new funding that has come through regionally, very clear 79% approval rating for Measure A, that we would be actually rolling back some important infrastructure, particularly at a time when the bicycle master plan for the city has not been updated since 1998. Generally speaking, when you make these kind of significant changes, particularly when it's in contrast or counter to policies that are in your transportation element, you would probably want to vet them. You would want them to be part of a kind of a bigger picture and actually have that be part of your bicycle master plan update. Also the fact that the bike lanes have not been bike lanes. They've been signed, and that's actually a Class 1 bike path, not a Class 2. I really thought that the comment by Kaufman Gray was actually a very good point, and it's something I've actually thought quite a bit about, and that is the city actually has some really great maps that show all the elementary schools in Santa Barbara, and it shows the recommended routes that you would want to encourage students to take to those schools. To the best of my knowledge, that's actually never been made public and been a resource for parents and teachers. So it's very, very likely that actually the parents and the students aren't aware that that facility was there and it was actually designed for them. So I would just urge you to do option 2. Give this some time, paint the stripes, make it a bike lane, what it was designed to do, and then when the bicycle master plan comes up, which we really hope is in the very near future, take a look at that and take a look at all of the ways that we're looking at encouraging students to get to school. Let these programs mature, like the COAST and the Bicycle Coalition bike ed programs. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right, Eric Wright, to be followed by Mark Bendaraga.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the committee. So I am in support of the alternative number 2 to restripe the bike lane. I think the biggest thing here is it's kind of an if you build it, they will come situation. There was a bike lane. It was slurry sealed over, and never put back. And as a result, it's really tough to justify the usage of those usage numbers for those particular bike lanes. If somebody doesn't know something's there, how can they possibly use it? It's also a bit of a unnerving precedent that will be set if this happens, because this will be one of the first bike lane rollbacks, as far as I know, in recent history in Santa Barbara. And if a few residents are prompted to voice their opinion that they don't believe parking should be as bad as it is, because I actually think, based on some of the ways parking works around here, everybody kind of has it a little tough. But that's neither here nor there. I think it's a tough precedent to institute because that could be a very slippery slope leading to more bike lanes being rolled back. And kind of to reiterate the point that Mr. Epperson made, I think this should be not necessarily looked at as just an individual section that doesn't connect to an actual network, but this should be viewed as an opportunity to reevaluate that 1998 bicycle master plan that was put into place, bring it back into kind of the public eye, and maybe perhaps make this part of the bicycle master plan and integrate this into a network. So yeah, I'm in full support for the alternative number 2. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mark Bendaraga, to be followed by Veronica Murphy.
Oh, hi, I'm Mark Bendaraga from the neighborhood. I live at 2053 Chino Street. And I just wanted to let you know the perspective of somebody who actually lives in the neighborhood. Most of us have one-car garages, and we can only park one car in the driveway, and so we're trying to get at least one car in the street. And I have a neighbor who has a total of 5 cars in this situation. And so the way it affects me living on Chino Street is that he brings his car from Gillespie and parks 3 or 4 of them on Eucalyptus where there's no parking control. And so that takes away some of the spaces that we have available to us. I looked into this issue a couple of years ago, and to give you some background, the people I talked to at the city told me that the Safe Streets program was implemented for the school when there was no continuous sidewalk along Gillespie Street. And then he looked at an aerial photo and confirmed that there are now continuous sidewalks along all of Gillespie Street and the route that the children take to school now. And, well, I won't go into that, but my experience in the neighborhood is that a lot of the kids are using MODOC sidewalks as their bike route. And that's where we get very little traffic coming through Chino Street to Eucalyptus to Gillespie. And I know it's not really an alternative, but if you decided to try and keep some bike paths in that neighborhood, there are other bigger streets that would be more suited to bike lanes than Gillespie, which is a very narrow street, which is why you can't have parking on both sides and lanes and traffic. So, thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Murphy, and that's the final speaker slip unless there's anyone else.
Good evening. I've been a resident on Robin Street since 1995, and I've been a stay-at-home mom since 2001 for the whole time. I've been a stay-at-home mom. I've never seen any children utilize Robin Street going to school, going to either Harding School or going towards La Cumbre School. So I do support the staff recommendation of number 1 or number 4, either just repaving Gillespie Street. So when you mentioned about does the school, like La Cumbre Junior High, do they inform the students where if there's a bike lane available? On my experience living on Robin Street alone, Robin Street is a busy street. People coming from the Mission, from the freeway, they go really fast and going up towards the west, going over to Robin Street, to Valero, and going over to the Mesa. That's their shortcut. And so as a parent, even if my children were going to La Cumbre Junior High School, which my son is going to go to a different school, I would not encourage my child to ride on Robin Street because it's too busy. So I would have my children ride, when we go downtown, we go on a quieter street like Mountain or Chino. Those are quieter streets, but Robin Street is a busy street. So I do support removing the parking prohibition, or number 4, repaint Gillespie Street only. So as a resident and having my own children, I would not even let my children ride their bikes on Robin Street. It's too busy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So are there other questions at this point for Mr. Bailey or Mr. Allen? And also comments are welcome at this point. No. Ms. Horn?
Just wondering what the status of the master bike plan is. And is that coming up for approval soon, or?
The update of the bicycle master plan has been put on hold indefinitely. We have other priorities that we're, focusing our attentions on.
So who puts that on hold? Yeah, I mean, that's my question of 1998, right,
Yes.
was when it was updated?
1998 when it was updated, and we did a minor revision to it in the early 2000s, shortly after I came here, and the council recertifies it every 5 years.
Okay. So
it has not had a comprehensive update since 1998.
okay, but it was updated in 08?
It was updated, it was last reviewed by council in 2008.
So then,
It's due for another review. If we're to be eligible for application for bicycle transportation account funds, we're going to have to have council recertify for another 5 years.
next year.
Yes.
But there's no intention of, changing it or reviewing it. We're just going to say, put your stamp on it again?
Correct.
And it's up to council to make that a priority? Or-
Ultimately, it would be up to council to make that a priority.
Okay. Well, I would certainly encourage council to maybe have folks take a look at it. I know that's workload, but when was the pedestrian master plan last updated?
Well, the pedestrian master plan was drafted and approved by council roughly in 2005, 2006, and we have not had to take a look at it since that was done.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Coffin-Gray.
Well, I don't have any questions, but I'll go ahead and just start making the comments. I brought the bicycle master plan with me today because I thought there were some important things in here that are related to what we're talking about tonight. As Browning said, it was put together, the copy I have says in 1998. And I just want to read, it says there's 3 goals of the bicycle master plan to follow the 3 major themes developed in the bicycle master plan. And this goal 1 is to enhance public awareness of the bicycle so that it is considered a viable, safe, fun, healthy, environmentally friendly mode of transportation. Goal 2, to create and maintain an extensive network of bikeways which enhance access between residential, recreational, educational, institutional, and commercial areas within and outside the city. And goal 3 is to provide support for people and their bikes once they reach their destinations. So if you look at goal 1, to enhance public awareness of the bicycle so that it's considered a viable, safe, healthy. I think that we have failed, as far as the schools go, to let the kids that go to La Cumbre and also Harding know that there was a bicycle route in the neighborhood. And so that goal has been failed in this instance. Goal 2 is to create and maintain an extensive network of bikeways. Well, I think the city failed in not putting the bike lanes back in after the slurry seal was done. And then goal 3, to provide support for people and their bicycles once they reach their destinations. Well, I think, the schools do have the bike racks and stuff. But I just mentioned this because I feel it's a combination of things that have happened that the reason why we see these, part of the reason, I'm not saying all the reason, part of the reason why we see the ridership so low is a combination of different factors. Like I said, I live in the neighborhood way up off of Valerio. I'm on the connector street that you're talking about that everyone drives by to go to the Mesa. And so I know Robbins is a busy street. Looking at the map that was shown earlier with the number of riderships on Robbins versus the others, I can see where students would feel safer going straight across Gillespie, all across, continuing that way instead of going on Mission over to Robbins. But that is something that probably can't be done at this type of meeting or anything right at the moment, but it's something that, if we revise a bicycle master plan, that's something when you look at the whole city, that route maybe should be looked, because I do agree Robbins is a very busy street. And if I was a bicycle rider, and especially school age, I probably would be reluctant to ride on it. Nevertheless, I think a lot of the problem, though, is that there's no signage that it's a bike lane except for the signs on the street. I mean, there's no striping. That was removed. And it doesn't sound like there's a lot of outreach in the schools to encourage the students that there is this route. So, I personally feel that I like, number 2, whereas we need to just restripe it, monitor it for a period of time, make sure the schools are the next class, the next school year, make sure that all the students know that this is available for them and it's there, and then revisit it after that. The cost for painting the bike lanes says $500. It's cheaper than removing the signs and posts. Of $1,000, I would say let's spend the $500, restripe the bike lanes for the upcoming school year, monitor it, and revisit it in the end of the school year. I do really feel for the neighbors because I know that can be a lot of work having to move your cars, and but maybe with the outreach and stuff we can figure out it's safe, because I'd rather encourage biking in this community as what is in our bicycle master plan, which is part of the general plan, and then starting to take away opportunities that encourage people to get out of their cars. So I support I guess it's alternative number 2, which is just repaint the bike lanes. But I would add to revisit it with the end of the next school year and do a count again and see if it had made a difference. Thank you.
Mr. Tabor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think I heard some of my thoughts come out of Keith's mouth while he was speaking. I wanted to kind of acknowledge kind of the extreme burden on the neighbors moving cars twice a day to accommodate bike lanes, and I don't think we're doing our best to encourage the use of those lanes at this stage in time. At least I can't see that we are. We're not even putting a stripe on the street, so it's unfair to them to allow this to happen and continue to happen this way. But I agree on that kind of a limited evaluation period. If we put it back and still there's no ridership or no significant increase in ridership after all of our best efforts, then I think it's fair to look at that again. I can see where people think the bike lane was taken away when the slurry seal went down because it disappeared. The only people who know about it are the people who get the traffic tickets, the parking tickets. I don't know that, well, looking at literature from other cities and other countries too, you see other different ways of approaching sharing the road, and we have a low volume road here on Gillespie that maybe could be signed a little more creatively that would encourage bicycle use on it. I don't know what that is. I've seen different color striping in the road. I've seen blue in some situations, but blue in this country means handicap, so maybe yellow or green would seem to signify that. Maybe there's a way without taking the cars off the street that we would let people know that there are kids on the street and you need to watch out for them and share the road with them. So I would encourage looking at something creative use that way that maybe could take some of the burden off the neighbors from moving their cars. And I don't know at this stage, I haven't done enough research to evaluate this neighborhood. My daughter went to junior high school here, but that was a long time ago. And I'm sure the patterns of travel have changed in that time. But I agree with I don't know if it was Veronica or Mark said that a lot of the kids going to the junior high school use MODOC. That was my observation back then, and I don't know that's the best place for bicycles to be, but perhaps looking a little more detail on how the existing patterns are, including how parents get in and out of the school to bring their kids, so we can see which streets are the busiest at those times of the day. But if, based on the information I see here, if you're asking me where the bike route should be, if there's going to be one, I'd say, well, all the kids use Gillespie right now. All the way down from Valerio to Portezuelo, so maybe that should be where it is. I don't know. But I think at the end of the trial period, let's call it, maybe a little more in-depth evaluation should take place before we go one way or the other on this. Thanks.
Swarm?
Well, I've been around the school a lot, and this was, however, new to me. And so as a parent, if I had my kids that age that were riding to school, I would definitely not let them ride on Robbins, as you say. And it's a dangerous place to ride your bike in those neighborhoods because of all the cars and because the road is so narrow because of all the cars parked there, and especially the traffic on Robbins and on Mission. And my feeling is that I think it would be great to restripe Gillespie for 1 year, a trial period, and then reevaluate it, but only Gillespie. And but I would also remove the prohibition for the afternoon parking, because in the afternoon, that school lets out at so many different times during the afternoon. The kids are spaced out, and then there's the after-school program, will let out at 6 o'clock in the evening, and it's just, I don't think it is practical at all to have a prohibition on parking in the afternoon. I do see it in the morning as a good thing for the trial period. So that's, I do think it's up to the city to listen to the residents too about the parking situation and the traffic. So those are my comments.
Is there, you don't have to speak if you don't want, but do you have comments? Just push the push button. Yep. There you go.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm comfortable at least making some comments. I tend to agree with Susan Horn on this because I'm kind of, I don't know, it could either make everybody a little happy or everybody a little upset, but it would be a little of both if Gillespie gets restriped, since that's where the kids seem to be, and they remove the signs on Valerio Robbins and Mission. I see that as a compromise and an opportunity to make a statement that bicycling should be supported, but maybe we do need to reevaluate which streets are best for the children to bicycle on. And we're at a real handicap if the bicycle plan hasn't been reevaluated since 1998. That's problematic, so I'm sure there are lots of reasons for that. But without having the context of a new plan, I would vote for, I would recommend alternative 4 in the same manner that Ms. Horn did.
So, number one, I don't like the idea of removing bike lanes, ever. We should be adding bike lanes, not removing them from our city. Number 2, piecemealing it by not looking at the bicycle master plan, which obviously is more of a commitment, more of a staff commitment, more of a public process commitment, which I think after 15 years we should probably take a look at. Especially with the major resurgence in biking, the rise in gas prices and all that, because I would like people other than just students to ride their bikes in our city, and people happen to be going to work a lot of the time from 7:30 to 9 a.m. So I think we shouldn't just say, it's a thing from the 70s, let's get rid of it. It's unfortunate that the stripes weren't put back down after slurry sealing, and I would hope that in the rest of the city, now there's kind of a redundancy to know, like, however the street was, let's put it back the way it was when we slurry seal it. The school bike map thing that was mentioned, as far as, I think Kent mentioned this, Mr. Allen, is that something that could, no matter what we do on this stretch, is that something that could be given to the schools and parents and released to the public?
Well, we have the pedestrian master plan, and included in there is a safe route to school section that has suggested route to school maps for each school, or most of the schools that were developed. And we contract with Coast to be the administrator of our safe route to school program. So definitely that's something that we hope and would expect Coast to hand out, to the school. We're not sure if we give stuff to the school if it's actually going to get in the hands of the students, but if Coast is in there actually performing a safe route to school program, then they can get it into the students' hands that way.
So, and that map that was referred to is in the PED master plan?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So I would suggest, if that's something that's not happening or whatever, to definitely get it out there, no matter what happens with this. To me, the situation on the west side is this. One, I don't think people can be expected to know that there's a bike lane there when there's no stripe. And 2, we are committing to making, we're committing to safe routes to schools, to Coombra Junior High, with what's going on at Modoc and Portezuela right now. And I would just hate, as that rolls out, that we pull back on something else in the neighborhood of not having this bike lane. And so I also like that it happens to be that the cheapest option is putting the stripe back on the road. So kind of where I'm at on this is, I understand the neighbors' concerns with the parking. That can definitely be a pain. But I would ask to bear with for another year at least to do kind of a test run of putting the stripe back down, having the community and hopefully the schools do a full court press to let students know you have a safe way to bike to school through these routes that exist. Use them, and then see from there. You know, to me, it would be the city's obligation to, if we were to take something away now or in the future, to give the neighborhood a way to get to school on a bike in a safe way. And if we're not doing that, then, you know, I think we're derelict in our duty of what the bicycle master plan says and what the circulation element says. So I would recommend alternative 2, put the stripe back down and encourage, you know, public education in this neighborhood. I know there are a lot of really good things going on the west side right now with the Thrive project, and, you know, these schools are making a huge comeback that I think now is not the time to be taking away a bike lane or leaving it off of the road. And then maybe a year later we take a look at how's it doing, and also in the meantime, is there a safer route that we can enhance the bike facilities on another street if we end up taking this away, and then we don't have to worry, neighbors don't have to worry about the parking situation. But I think we can hopefully look creatively at this and come to a conclusion. So,
Sure.
Alan?
Yep. You know, when we first started talking about this, you know, we were struggling with this. And I can tell the committee that we've had, when Drew Van Hingel was here as our mobility coordinator before she was promoted to the supervisor of transportation operation, had several requests over the last 10 or so years to remove this bike lane, even when it was striped. And our answer has always been no. It's there for a purpose, for providing a route for our students to get to Lacumba Junior High School. So, you know, when we started talking about it and saying, hey, our recommendation is going to be removing a bike lane, we all say, wow, the Transportation Division is recommending removal of a bike lane. Wow, who would have thought? You know, it's a really tough decision, you know, something for us to do, really tough decision. So we didn't take this recommendation lightly. We really struggled with this for quite some time. Kind of hearing what the committee might be headed, if there's a desire to evaluate this, because one of the things that we talked about seriously was evaluating this, put this back in the hands of the school as well as COAST. Not just paint the stripe, but put it back in the hands of our Safe Route to School coordinator as well as the school, you know, for the year that they make effort, and even maybe the Bike Coalition may be part of that, make efforts to try and increase the bicycling. And if we don't see a market improvement, then we would be back to this committee with the similar recommendation. We also looked at, well, maybe just do it on Gillespie Street, or maybe change the route. Maybe we should be taking another look, and maybe it should be in a different area. And that's when we said, hey, we do that, and you need to take a comprehensive look of the entire neighborhood, not just a couple of streets. And if we move it from Robbins to Gillespie, now we're impacting a different street, and they haven't had input. So we had spent a lot of time struggling with this before we came with this recommendation to the committee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that is the case. And I would be supportive of that, of you know, putting the stripe back on the road and then having there be a serious safe routes to school component. And like I said before, not just public education on for students, but there are adult human beings that ride their bikes on the west side. It's not a secret, and they deserve a safe way to work in the morning too. So I think you get the benefit, and obviously the numbers it takes into account school aged and non-school aged. But if we're encouraging people to get onto their bikes instead of driving everywhere, then maybe we could, you know, enhance the bike facilities. Yeah, Mr. Coppengray?
Well, why don't I take a stab and do a motion? I hear there's two opinions, I think, on this committee right now. I'll make a motion and we can just do a vote on it, and then maybe if that doesn't work, do another one. Mm-hmm. But I'll make a motion for alternative number 2, repaint the bike lane stripes and continue to operate the part-time bike lanes, and add revisit it at the end of this coming school year. And encourage COAST and the Bicycle Coalition to do outreach to the schools to let the upcoming school year class of students understand that there is a bike lane for them to use to get to and from school. And I also would like to add Harding School to the elementary school.
I would second that. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. 4 in support, 1 abstention.
Did you oppose? Or?
Okay.
No, just
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Ms. Rodriguez abstaining. Okay. Well, there you go. So.
We'll be back next summer sometime with results.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We have one more item, and we'll invite Mr. France back. And thank you to Mr. Bailey for the presentation, and hopefully someday we can unearth the transportation records from the 1970s, because I'm sure they're riveting. All right.
Only if you need to go to sleep.
Great. Okay, number 5, Anacapa and Cabrillo intersection improvements. And if there are any people wishing to speak in public comment, you can submit a slip over there. And we have a presentation. Just getting our technical stuff in working order here. All right.
Well, my name is Ashley Hsu, and I'm a project engineer with the City of Santa Barbara's Engineering Division. And tonight I'm here to present a report on the Cabrillo at Anacapa Intersection Improvements Project. And Derek Bailey, our traffic engineer, is here to answer any questions as they may come up. So as you know, the Cabrillo-Anacapa intersection is located in the Waterfront District, which is an area with very high pedestrian volumes. It's located very close to Stearns Wharf. There are tour buses that regularly load and unload passengers on the north side of Cabrillo, immediately adjacent to the intersection. The city's skate park is located immediately south of the intersection, which has increased the number of young people crossing Cabrillo at this intersection. And the Art Walk also takes place on the weekends. That draws a large number of pedestrians to the area. So due to the concentration of pedestrians in this area and observations of operational issues at this intersection, it's been identified as a high priority for pedestrian improvements. Over the past 10 years, there have been 4 pedestrian-involved collisions and 2 bicycle-involved collisions. And in total, 4 of the collisions could have been corrected by enhancing crossing conditions at the intersection. In 2010, the city hired Penfield and Smith engineers here in town to prepare conceptual alternatives aimed at improving operations at the intersection. Penfield and Smith developed 4 conceptual alternatives, the first of which was Alternative A, which was the lowest cost alternative, and that included high visibility signing, striping changes, and lighting improvements at the intersection. Alternative B included the improvements from Alternative A, as well as a raised median refuge island to provide a 2-stage crossing for pedestrians, as well as a curb extension on the northeast corner, which would improve sightlines from Anacapa. Alternative C was Alternative B plus a curb extension on the south side of Cabrillo, which would improve visibility and eliminate the need to reduce on-street parking. Finally, Alternative D was a conventional traffic signal. However, this intersection does not meet state traffic signal warrants, except for the pedestrian volume warrant during summer Sundays, which is considered a worst-case scenario. In addition, because the Anacapa intersection is located so close to the State Street intersection, it would interfere with operations at the State and Cabrillo traffic signal, which during peak times I'm sure you've experienced. Queues can back up down Cabrillo all the way through the Anacapa intersection, So an additional signal would only make operations worse. And the state Cabrillo traffic signal operates most efficiently in its isolated state. After reviewing and evaluating the conceptual alternatives provided by Penfield and Smith, city staff recommends that a modified alternative C be implemented at the intersection. The modifications include an additional curb extension on the northwest corner, as well as the installation of pedestrian-activated flashing beacons. This slide shows the preliminary layout of the proposed improvements. The gray shading is indicating new concrete construction, which would be either new sidewalk construction or reconstruction. And the green shading shows potential areas to be landscaped. And we have a landscape architect on board to help us with that process. So I'm going to go quickly through 4 primary components of the proposed design that each serve a different purpose. The median refuge island would be located on the east leg of the intersection, directly opposite the existing eastbound left turn lane in an area of pavement that's currently unused. The median would be 6 feet wide and would provide a space for pedestrians to cross half the street at a time rather than the full width of the street. The south side curb extension, its primary purpose is to preserve on-street parking. Without the curb extension, sightlines are very limited due to the on-street parking, and additional parking spaces would have to be eliminated on either side of the intersection to improve sightlines here. The proposed curb extension would be almost identical to the existing south side curb extensions at both the Cabrillo-Chapala and Cabrillo-Bath intersections, and the photo at the right side of the slide shows the existing south side curb extension at the Cabrillo-Bath intersection. The proposed curb extension would extend approximately 5 feet into the roadway and would maintain a 14-foot outside lane on the south side for vehicles and bicycles to share. The pedestrian-activated flashing beacons that are proposed would alert motorists to pedestrian crossing activity across Cabrillo, and the HLC recently approved the installation of these flashing beacons at both the Cabrillo-Bath and Cabrillo-Chapala intersections. On the north side of the intersection, the curb extension on the northeast corner, which is where the Fish House restaurant is located, would facilitate the installation of the pedestrian-activated flashing beacon. As you can see from the photo on the right, the existing sidewalk is extremely narrow in front of the Fish House, and there would not be sufficient room to install the flashing beacon in its current layout. So by installing a curb extension at this corner, the sidewalk could be widened and the flashing beacon could be installed in the landscaped area of the curb extension. Although the curb extension would require the elimination of the existing westbound right turn lane, the volumes utilizing that right turn lane are relatively low right now, and staff believes that the safety benefits that the curb extension would bring to the pedestrians outweigh the trade-off of eliminating that right turn lane. A 6-foot bike lane will be maintained at this corner, even with the addition of the curb extension. And additionally, the sidewalk along the entire frontage of the Fish House will be widened by approximately 2 feet. And that will help improve pedestrian circulation. This is the area that you can see in the photo. There's a tour bus parked there. They line up, and a lot of pedestrians are in that area at one time. So the sidewalk widening would be a big benefit to pedestrians in that area. The curb extension on the Fish House corner would create a shadow of unused pavement on the northeast corner, which is where El Torito is located. So this project also proposes to install a curb extension on the northwest corner. And this would allow for additional sidewalk widening on that corner and would also match up with improvements that are being constructed as part of the Cabrillo Bridge replacement project in the next several years. And a 5-foot bike lane will be maintained on this corner with the curb extension. And both of the curb extensions on the north side of the intersection will improve sightlines for vehicles turning from Anacapa onto Cabrillo. The curb extensions that are currently proposed have been designed so as not to impede vehicular traffic, and that includes emergency vehicles and delivery vehicles. We've met with the fire department, and they've reviewed the preliminary plans, and they support the proposed design. In addition to the components I've just gone through, lighting will be improved at the intersection. Currently, there's no lighting provided on the north side of Cabrillo, and on the south side of Cabrillo, there is some lighting, however, not located directly at the intersection. So the project will install a new city standard street light on the northeast corner of the intersection to improve lighting. In terms of project funding, staff has submitted a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant application to cover the construction costs for this project. We expect to receive the results of that application in October. If we are unable to get HSIP grant funds, we will need to identify additional funding in order to construct the project. And for timing, we plan to construct the project during the later phases of the Cabrillo Bridge replacement project so that it will connect seamlessly with the improvements being done as part of that project. And that could be as early as 2014, depending on the progress of the bridge project. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kaufman-Gray?
Just one question. You said the right turn lane be eliminated. You're not saying right turns will be eliminated, but just the lane will be eliminated.
Correct.
Correct?
They would
Okay.
share the through lane.
Okay. And the other question, lots of tourist buses park along that north side. Is there any bus lanes going to be eliminated? Will there still be room for the buses to park along there?
The bus parking will still be maintained. There's currently red curb in the area where the curb extension will be, so buses aren't
Okay.
allowed to park there currently.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Was there ever a bike lane on the ocean side? I mean, you're not eliminating a bike lane, are you?
No.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Tabor?
Thank you. Pedestrian lighting, how's that activated? Is the pedestrian involved in coming up and touching a button and the lights go off and then they go across?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I recommend you put it in several languages. I was over there yesterday afternoon and just to see how it was working, and I must have heard 4 or 5 different languages in the 20 minutes that I was there. So I hope it's obvious how it works.
I have a question about the pedestrian activated. Would these be the new and improved rectangular rapid flashing beacons?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Maybe we can get a deal on them if we get them in bulk. We'll put them everywhere in the city. That's what we're using on Milpas, so hopefully it'll be the new fancy thing. Other questions or comments?
Well, just a follow-up.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Tabor?
I frequent Cabrillo Boulevard on summer Sundays and Saturdays, and there's quite a queue of folks coming and going to that intersection, waiting to cross, and as long as they're patient and the cars are patient, everything works out. Has any thought been given to just how many people are crossing and how often they'd be hitting that button to turn those yellow lights on, and how that might affect traffic getting across that intersection? It would seem that there'd be a lot of people using it, and at certain times of the day, it might be a hindrance to the flow of traffic.
Right, there would be. The lights, they're warning lights. So they, once a pedestrian activates the lights, traffic comes to a stop, pedestrian goes across. Once there's a gap in traffic, even though the lights are still flashing, traffic can go. Traffic will still be able to utilize gaps. It's not like a traffic signal where if it's red, they have to stop. As well, I've thought a little bit about what you're saying, and we might have to put a delay timer into the flasher, so it's not just one activation after another. Maybe there has to be a gap of 20, 25 seconds in between activations. But That's something we'd have to adjust once it's constructed.
Okay, so that option is there, and it's kind of a do-it-fix-it kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you. I have not seen these lights, I apologize, but I'm a little confused. Is this the type of thing where you'll see lighting all along the street in front of you if you're driving, or just at the
It's not in
corners?
pavement lighting. There'll be overhead flashing beacons.
Oh, so there'll be posts
Correct.
on the sidewalk, and it'll be up there,
Correct.
out in the middle of the street?
I could go back to one of Ashley's earlier pictures. Oops. If you notice this sign on the right-hand side right here, there's a light bar. It's about 2 feet wide by 5 or 6 inches tall, and it's mounted right underneath that. Where did my mouse go? Right underneath that warning sign. And there's 2 lights on the light bar, one on each side, and they kind of flash in rapid succession. It really draws your attention. So they're not large lights, and they kind of mount right into the existing sign assembly.
So yeah, would there be, just one second, would there be, I guess, maybe I missed this, there would be a, no, it would be one in the median refuge island and then one on either side, or?
Right, so each
Okay.
approach will see 2 lights, one on the side of the road and then one in the median refuge island. So the median refuge island will be dual-sided.
Right, and then at the median refuge island, so if I'm on, say, the north side of the street and I activate it, how long, does it only flash long enough for me to, whatever the estimated time to get to the island is, or all the way across?
No, we'll be providing enough flashing light time so that the entire crossing can be made. The purpose of the refuge island is just if, for whatever reason, people don't make it all the way. We can have slow walkers. We could have some people that they follow some other people that activated the light who are already halfway across the street, and they don't push the button to continue it. It's the median refuge island. It's a place to wait. And
But
it
there's
helps.
not an activator in the...
There will be an
Oh, there is.
activator.
Perfect.
So if they get
so you don't get
stranded
stranded.
out there. Yep.
Okay, great. We had a question from our Planning Commission liaison. Could you come up to the mic? Or this one, wherever you, please.
Planning Commissioner Deborah Schwartz, liaison to the TCC. Just so I understand what the plan is for the lights, because as you can hear from the questions, there was some confusion about where they'll be positioned. So are we talking about 3 flashing lights, one on either side and then one in the refuge island? There will be 3?
Correct. Yes.
And while you're coming up, Mr. Bailey, the reason I ask is because I'm very familiar with this area, and if the tour buses are lined up, so let's say we're going, what would that be, west? If the buses are lined up, the line of sight, I think, for most drivers, most automobile drivers, is not to the right looking at the fish house. You know, they're following, their eye is coming around the bend looking towards the stoplight at Cabrillo and State.
Right.
So if we only had the flashing lights on either side, I would be concerned that the driver would not perhaps see that the lights have been activated and a pedestrian is about to cross.
Right. Currently, we're proposing just 2 lights in each direction. So there would be, if we look at the drawing right now, for the westbound direction, there'd be one right here, as well as one right here. For the eastbound direction, there would be one here and one here. One thing to point out in Ashley's design with the curb extension on this side, it is longer than a typical curb extension. We're thinking about 2 things here. One is that exact concern with the tour buses possibly obstructing the view of pedestrians and the flashing device. But as well, something we have out there currently in response to some comments from the fish house is we've actually hashed out with pavement markings right in front of the fish house, their outdoor dining area. Tour buses in the past have pulled up and parked in that area, and the fish house, that view is everything. So having some hardscape here will physically prevent somebody from parking there, but the added sight lines are a bonus.
So is it fair to say that really you're relying on the refuge median flashing beacon to be the one that the drivers are going to see most readily?
It depends which lane they're in and which and what's around them traffic-wise.
Okay.
The Cabrillo Boulevard, if we look at the drawing here, it's actually kind of curving up as you're approaching this intersection. So cars just off the right-hand side of the screen here, you're actually a little bit further south, so you've got a direct sight line in here, as well as the bike lane provides a buffer between the edge of the parked buses and where the flashing device will be. I'm confident that drivers in that outside lane, even with buses parked there, will be able to see that flashing device. But if there is somebody on the inside lane and they're driving next to a large delivery truck, for whatever reason, they'll have view of the one in the median. That's why we'd like to use two.
And then, Madam Chair, just a comment, if I might, about this. I think it's interesting that in this presentation we have this 10-year bike and pedestrian involved collision history, which clearly shows that there's a nexus between the two. We are tracking and we have concern about bicycle activity, and yet I'm sorry I came in late. My Planning Commission meeting ran late today. But at the same time, the previous item that I came in on, I think I heard Mr. Allen say that the bicycle master plan is on hold indefinitely. So I see a little bit of a conflict between what we're trying to do in one area of our community, but not attending to in the community as a whole. So I just want to say that I'm going to be discussing with several council members the status of our bicycle master plan and whether or not they have an interest in folding that into their consideration in a more accelerated timeline. Thank you.
Fantastic. Happy to be a part of that as well. All right, other questions? Mr. France?
I have one quick question. In terms of the chart that you've given for the collision history, I really appreciate this information. As Deborah Schwartz put out, it's great to have this as a reference because clearly these collisions that are reported are a reflection of all the overall near misses and whatnot. And there's if you can help me here, I seem to be reading a pattern where almost all of the pedestrian broadside collisions that were correctable by this enhancement were southbound. In other words, they're coming from by the fish house on that corner down towards the beach. And even the one that wasn't that, the pedestrian eastbound, where the vehicle action was northbound, and this is kind of my question, it seems to me that that broadside would likely have been from a right-hand turn, which actually seems, I mean, maybe not engineering, maybe wouldn't fit the criteria for a correctable engineering thing, but having this curb extension where the right-hand turn lane would be, which of course it's dark on that side of the street as we can see from the pictures, seems like that would be correctable as well. In the I would infer, perhaps not technically correctable, but is that fair to say though that the trend seems to be pedestrians coming from perhaps it seems more shaded area, but certainly going out towards the beach are the typical collision?
Absolutely. That seems to be the pattern, and as well, if you'll notice the times that it's happening, it's more in the afternoon when the shadow is going to be more pronounced, or later in the day when drivers are heading into the sun and pedestrians are less visible.
So thank you. I think this information certainly builds the case of the safety benefit of these improvements.
Other questions or comments?
Comment.
Mr. Tabor?
Well, just I think it's easy call to with the improvements here that this would be consistent with the circulation element. I think the experience we have on the between Castillo and State Street on the other side with the improvements over there, my observation is that they have been successful. They're used people in cars with the curb extensions can easily see pedestrians waiting to cross the street and are actually waiting for them. I like the bright striping there that the crosswalks have too, and I understand that that's going to be the same thing here too. That pattern will continue good. So I think what we've done down that way appears to be working, and I'm glad to see it extended over here.
I agree. It's an exciting project, and I think moves us forward in safety, and we've really been paying attention to pedestrian safety lately. Yay! So thank you for your presentation.
Don't we have to have a motion on this?
We do, yes.
I
Would
think we have to have a motion
like
on
to
this.
make one?
Well, I'll just make a motion to,
You have another comment?
No, do we have no public comment on this?
No, we don't.
Okay.
I move to just go forward with staff's recommendation for the corner of Cabrillo and Anacapa intersection.
And I think also find that it's in.
It's consistent with the circulation element of the general plan.
I'd second that.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstain. All right. Unanimous. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, and good luck with the grant. All right. So that is everything on our agenda today. I want to congratulate Committee Member Rodriguez. You made it through.
Phew.
And thank you, everybody, for attending.
So our next meeting is
uh-huh.
looking like October. If we have an item before, I'll let the chair know, but right now we're planning on having a meeting in October.
Can't wait. All right. So motion to adjourn be in order.
I move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Sorry, to put the gun on you.